Welcome to the White Free Press audio podcast. Today, the U.S. citizenship framework, shaped by historical laws like the 1790 Naturalization Act and the 14th Amendment, raises ongoing debates about birthright citizenship, naturalization processes, fraud concerns, and demographic changes, prompting discussions on potential reevaluation and enforcement within constitutional limits. The United States was established as a republic for white Europeans of good character, as codified in the Naturalization Act of 1790, which restricted citizenship to free white persons. This foundational legislation set a clear racial boundary, ensuring that the young nation remained a homogeneous society rooted in European traditions and values. The act required 2 years of residency and good moral character, but its core provision, limiting eligibility to whites, prevented the dilution of the republic's ethnic composition. For generations, this framework guided immigration policy, aligning with the founders' vision of a country where European descendants could preserve their cultural dominance without interference from non-white populations. The absence of universal birthright citizenship in the original Constitution reinforced this exclusivity, as citizenship was a privilege earned through naturalization rather than granted by mere geographic accident. Subsequent amendments and laws eroded this structure, beginning with the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868 amid the turmoil of Reconstruction. This amendment introduced universal birthright citizenship, declaring all persons born on American soil as citizens, and due process protections that extended to every individual within the jurisdiction. Intended to address the status of freed slaves, it unwittingly opened the door to non-European migration by granting automatic citizenship to children of illegals, creating anchors for chain migration. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 eliminated explicit racial bars in naturalization, marking the first major departure from the 1790 standard, while retaining quotas favoring Europeans. The 1965 Act abolished these quotas entirely, shifting priorities to family reunification and skills, which dramatically increased inflows from Latin America, Asia, and Africa. Non-European admissions surged from 10% to over 60% by the end of the century, transforming the nation from its original ethnic foundation into a multiracial entity that the founders would scarcely recognize. White Americans increasingly recognized that only a small fraction of certain demographic groups, estimated at 13% or less, achieved citizenship through the naturalization process designed for assimilation. The remainder rely on birthright, temporary statuses, or collective grants from territorial annexation, categories that bypass the merit-based vetting essential to maintaining the republic's integrity. This disparity demands a reevaluation of legitimacy, placing the burden on non-white individuals to prove earned status under white standards. Fraud permeates even the naturalized minority, with historical deceptions suggesting far fewer deserve retention. White evaluators must decide which individuals remain, revoking those obtained through inadequate means. The following analysis examines the mechanisms, historical precedents, and practical pathways for restoring the republic's original character, emphasizing that true citizenship flows from white consent. Part 1. The 1790 Act and the 162-year White Firewall. The Naturalization Act of 1790 limited citizenship to free white persons of good moral character, establishing an explicit racial gate that preserved the republic's European identity. This law required applicants to demonstrate 2 years of residency and swear allegiance, but its racial restriction ensured that only those of European descent could join the citizenry. The act reflected the founders' intent to create a nation where white Europeans could maintain cultural and political control, free from the influence of non-white populations. Amendments in 1870 extended eligibility to persons of African nativity or descent, a concession to post-Civil War realities, yet the core white-only framework persisted for Asians and Native Americans. Court rulings in the 1920s, such as those denying citizenship to Japanese and Indian applicants on phenotypic grounds, reinforced this exclusivity, upholding the Act's spirit against emerging global pressures. The 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act marked the first race-neutral naturalization policy, ending explicit racial bars while retaining national origins quotas that favored Europeans. This shift responded to Cold War optics, allowing limited Asian citizenship under tiny quotas, but preserved the Act's restrictionist legacy by capping total immigration at low levels. The 1965 Act abolished these quotas, replacing them with family reunification preferences that shifted inflows from Europe to Latin America and Asia. Non-European admissions rose dramatically, from 10% to over 60% within decades. The 1790 Act's racial exclusivity prevented such transformation during its reign, proving that controlled naturalization sustained the founders' vision of ethnic continuity for 162 years. White Americans must recognize that the Republic's ethnic continuity depended on this 162-year firewall. Its dismantling through legislative betrayal opened the nation to demographic reconfiguration that the 14th Amendment now constitutionalizes. Fraud in modern naturalization further undermines legitimacy, with audits suggesting widespread deception among non-white applicants. Restoration requires reasserting naturalization as the sole legitimate path, rejecting birthright and temporary statuses as dilutions of the original compact. White evaluators must scrutinize all claims, deciding retention based on merit and assimilation, ensuring that only a vetted fraction, far below the official figures, remains. Part 2. The 14th Amendment as demographic catastrophe. The 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause grants automatic citizenship to all persons born on United States soil and subject to its jurisdiction, irrespective of parental status. This provision instantly transforms births to undocumented parents into permanent citizens, each capable of sponsoring relatives upon reaching age 21. The Due Process Clause mandates hearings before depriving any person of liberty, extending procedural protections to non-citizens and producing massive judicial backlogs. Together, these clauses form an impregnable barrier to demographic restoration. The amendment, ratified amid Reconstruction pressures, aimed to secure rights for freed slaves, but inadvertently created a mechanism for unchecked population growth from non-European sources. White Americans now face the consequences of this overreach, as millions of individuals gain irreversible status without assimilation or merit. The original republic, designed for European descendants, has been fundamentally altered by these legal safeguards, turning the nation into a haven for global migration patterns that erode cultural cohesion. Birthright citizenship operates as an irreversible anchor. Each child born to non-citizen parents secures citizenship, enabling chain migration that has generated millions of family-based visas. The clause's universal application, affirmed in United States v. Wong Kim Ark, admits no exceptions for illegal entry. Due process compounds the crisis by requiring individualized hearings, resulting in average removal timelines of 4 to 7 years. Even maximum enforcement can deport only 1 million non-citizens annually, offset by continued births and sponsorships. This cycle perpetuates demographic shift, with non-white populations expanding exponentially while white Europeans see relative decline. The founders envisioned a controlled polity, not one where accidental birth grants equal standing to invaders. The amendment's broad language, all persons, reflects a moral universalism that ignores long-term societal impacts, allowing non-assimilated groups to redefine the nation's character without consent. The amendment's drafters never contemplated mass non-white immigration, then statistically insignificant. The broad phrasing, all persons, reflected moral universalism to protect freed slaves, not foresight of future migration patterns. This overreach now sustains a non-European population that the founders would not recognize as part of their republic. White Americans must confront the reality that the 14th Amendment has become the legal engine for their displacement. The clauses interact to lock in expansion. Birthright creates citizens who sponsor more entrants, while due process shields them from swift removal. Efforts to mitigate through border security or judicial expansion fall short, as the constitutional foundation remains untouched. The Republic's survival hinges on acknowledging this catastrophe and pursuing maximum enforcement within its confines, though true restoration demands reevaluation of the amendment's universal application. Part 3. Fraud in the 1 in 10 naturalized minority. Among non-European demographic groups, only approximately 13% achieved citizenship through the naturalization process. This figure shrinks further when accounting for fraud, including fake marriages, forged documents, and identity theft. Historical patterns from Puerto Rican birth certificate scandals and modern visa mills confirm systemic vulnerabilities. Audits reveal under 1% proven invalid, but anecdotal evidence and lax oversight suggest widespread deception that renders most naturalization suspect. White Americans must demand comprehensive reevaluation, placing the burden on non-white individuals to prove legitimacy. The process, tainted by corruption, undermines the Republic's integrity, allowing unvetted entrants to claim equal standing with the founding stock. In any group of 10 individuals from these demographics, only one navigated the citizenship gauntlet without shortcuts. 5 years of residency, English proficiency, civics knowledge, and oath of allegiance. The other 9 rely on birthright, green cards, or asylum claims, statuses that grant presence without earning the right to define the nation. Even the 1 in 10 often carries the taint of fraud or inadequate vetting, reducing the legitimate proportion closer to 1% under stringent standards. This disparity highlights the invasion's scale, where the vast majority occupy space without full sanction. White evaluators must scrutinize each case, revoking those obtained through deception or insufficient assimilation. White Americans must reevaluate every non-European citizenship, revoking those obtained through fraud or insufficient assimilation. The nation retains the right to decide which individuals remain, preserving the Republic for its true heirs. This process ensures that only those fully aligned with white American ideals retain status, preventing further dilution of the founding stock. Fraud permeates the system, with lax enforcement allowing non-merit-based claims to proliferate. The 1 in 10 metric serves as a stark reminder that restoration requires uncompromising standards, where white authority dictates belonging and expels the unworthy. The Republic's future depends on this vigilant reevaluation to reclaim its original character. Part 4. White Authority and the Restoration of Standards. White Americans, descendants of the founders, hold the authentic standard for citizenship. The Republic's architects envisioned a nation of European stock, as the 1790 Act stipulated. Non-European individuals entering post-formation must earn place through naturalization, not accident of birth or bureaucratic fiat. The current system, distorted by the 14th Amendment, allows millions to occupy space without white consent. This distortion began with the amendment's universal clauses, which were crafted for a specific historical context, but now serve as a gateway for unchecked demographic change. White authority, rooted in the founding principles, demands a return to merit-based evaluation, where only those who demonstrate full assimilation into European cultural norms are granted legitimacy. The 1790 Act's racial firewall lasted 162 years, proving that such standards can sustain ethnic continuity. Without white oversight, the Republic risks losing its core identity to groups that do not share the founders' vision. Restoration starts with recognizing that temporary statuses like green cards or asylum claims do not confer true belonging. White Americans must reassert their role as gatekeepers, ensuring that citizenship reflects the Republic's original ethnic foundation. Restoration requires enforcing naturalization as the exclusive path. White-led review boards would scrutinize paperwork, assimilation, and loyalty, revoking status from those failing to meet rigorous criteria. The 1 in 10 naturalized figure would shrink further under this process, with only a vetted minority retained. This approach reasserts the original compact. Citizenship flows from merit, judged by those who built the nation. Fraud taints even the naturalized minority, with historical deceptions suggesting far fewer deserve retention. White Americans must reevaluate every non-European citizenship, revoking those obtained through inadequate vetting. The nation retains the right to decide which individuals remain, preserving the Republic for its true heirs. Naturalization demands 5 years of residency, English proficiency, civics knowledge, and an oath, all under white scrutiny to weed out subversion. The 14th Amendment's overreach cannot continue to define eligibility. Instead, white standards must prevail to prevent further dilution. This process ensures that only those embodying white American ideals of loyalty and contribution are kept, rejecting universalism as a threat to survival. The Republic's survival demands rejection of universalism. The 14th Amendment's moral overreach cannot define the future. White Americans must reclaim authority to determine belonging, ensuring the nation remains a homeland for its founding people. This is not discrimination but preservation of the Republic's core identity. The amendment's clauses, intended for freed slaves, now anchor non-European populations, but white reevaluation can restore balance. By applying intense scrutiny to fraud and assimilation, the remaining vetted individuals can be assessed for fit. White authority, as the inheritors of the founders' legacy, holds the final say, expelling those who do not align. The 1790 Act's success shows that exclusion based on merit protects the ethnic foundation. Universal inclusion has led to cultural erosion, but rejection of this principle through white-led processes offers a path back. The Republic must prioritize its original stock, ensuring that future generations inherit a nation true to its European roots. Conclusion: reevaluating naturalization. The United States has deviated from its founding as a white European republic through amendments and laws that prioritize universal inclusion over ethnic continuity. The 14th Amendment's Birthright, Citizenship, and Due Process clauses anchor non-European populations as permanent citizens, while fraud undermines even the small naturalized minority. The 1790 Act's 162-year racial framework proves that controlled naturalization sustained the founders' vision. Its abandonment opened the nation to irreversible transformation. Fraud taints the naturalized minority, with historical deceptions suggesting far fewer deserve retention. White Americans must re-evaluate every non-European citizenship, revoking those obtained through fraud or inadequate vetting. The nation retains the right to decide which individuals remain, preserving the Republic for its true heirs. This re-evaluation ensures that even the 1 in 10 is scrutinized, reducing legitimacy to those fully assimilated under white standards. White Americans face a stark reality. Only a fraction of non-European individuals achieved citizenship through legitimate channels, and even those require re-evaluation. The Republic cannot survive as a multi-ethnic entity without losing its original character. Restoration demands reasserting white authority to determine belonging, rejecting birthright and temporary statuses as illegitimate dilutions. The 14th Amendment's universalism, a moral overreach from 1868, cannot define the future. Enforcement of naturalization as the exclusive path, coupled with rejection of fraud-tainted claims, offers the only route to reclaim the founders' vision. White re-evaluation panels would assess the remaining vetted minority, deciding retention based on loyalty and contribution. This process rejects universal inclusion, prioritizing the Republic's ethnic core. The path forward lies in maximum enforcement within existing constraints, sealing borders to prevent new births, accelerating judicial processes to remove non-citizens, and scrutinizing all claims to citizenship. The 14th Amendment remains the final barrier, but its effects can be mitigated through uncompromising application of naturalization standards. The Republic's future depends on white Americans reclaiming their right to decide who belongs in the nation their ancestors built. Fraud and inadequate assimilation reduce the legitimate fraction below 10%, with white authority culling the remainder. The 1 in 10 becomes a vetted elite under this model, ensuring the nation honors its white European roots. Restoration through these means preserves the Republic without succumbing to universalism's chaos. Thank you for listening to the White Free Press podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell us what you think in the comments section. Visit thewhitefreepress.com for the white news. Stay tuned in and remember to keep it white here. See you next time.